On December 28, 1956, two sisters walked into a movie theater in Chicago to watch their favorite Elvis Presley film for the 11th time. They never made it home. What happened next would become one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries in American history. A case so disturbing that it shattered the innocence of an entire city and left investigators chasing shadows for decades. Barbara Grimes was 15 years old. Her sister Patricia had just turned 12 3 days before Christmas. They were inseparable, devoted fans of Elvis Presley, who had recently joined his official fan club. On that cold winter evening, they begged their mother to let them see Love Me Tender one more time at the Brighton Theater, about 1.5 miles from their McKinley Park home. Their mother, Loretta, agreed, but with one condition. They had to be home by midnight. The girls left around 7:30 in the evening with about $2.50 between them, enough for admission, popcorn, and bus fare home. A friend of Patricia's, Dorothy Weinert, saw them at the theater that night. She remembered them standing in line for popcorn during intermission, giggling and happy. Dorothy left early, but the Grimes sisters stayed for the second screening. That was the last confirmed sighting of them alive. When midnight came and went without the girls returning home, their mother sent their older siblings to wait at the bus stop. 3 buses passed, no Barbara, no Patricia. By 2:15 in the morning, Loretta Grimes was filing missing person reports with the Chicago Police Department, her voice shaking as she insisted something was terribly wrong. What followed was one of the largest missing persons investigations in Cook County history. Hundreds of police officers flooded the streets. Volunteers searched door to door. Rivers were dredged. Canals were searched. Over 15,000 flyers were distributed throughout the city. The case consumed Chicago. Everyone was looking for the Grimes sisters. But here's where things get strange. Really strange. Despite the official timeline that would later be established, dozens of people came forward claiming they'd seen the girls alive in the days and even weeks after December 28th. A bus driver swore he'd seen them board his bus that night, heading in the direction of their home. 2 teenage boys claimed they spotted the sisters giggling and jumping out of doorways near their house around 11:30. A security guard said he gave them directions the next morning. A classmate insisted she saw Patricia walking past a restaurant. A railroad conductor reported seeing them searching for sailors named Terry and Larry at a naval training center. The sightings kept coming. The owner of a restaurant on West Madison Street, over 5 miles from the theater, claimed he saw both girls on December 30th, with Patricia appearing drunk or sick, barely able to walk. A hotel clerk said they'd checked in. Employees at a department store swore they saw the sisters listening to Elvis Presley records on January 3rd. And then there was the woman in Nashville who claimed she met both girls in a restroom on January 9th and helped them look for work at an employment agency. Were these people mistaken? Were they seeking attention? Or had something far more sinister been happening? The police didn't know what to believe. Some investigators initially theorized the girls had simply run away, perhaps to follow Elvis to Nashville or to escape some unknown trouble at home. This theory infuriated the girl's mother, who knew her daughters would never leave voluntarily. Elvis Presley himself got involved. On January 19th, he made a televised statement from Graceland, pleading with the sisters to come home. "If you are good Presley fans, you'll go home and ease your mother's worries," he said. He also made a direct radio appeal, but there was no response, no phone call, no letter, nothing. 3 days later, on January 22nd, a construction worker named Leonard Prescott was driving along a desolate stretch of German Church Road in Willow Springs when he noticed what he described as flesh-colored things behind a guardrail. At first, he thought they might be mannequins. He returned with his wife Marie, who fainted when she realized what they were looking at. The frozen, nude bodies of Barbara and Patricia Grimes lay in the snow, positioned behind the guardrail as if someone had simply tossed them there like garbage. The scene was horrific. Barbara lay on her left side with her legs drawn up. Patricia was on her back, her body covering her sister's head. 3 wounds resembling ice pick punctures marked Barbara's chest. Both girls had injuries to their faces and bodies. They had no clothes, no identification, nothing. The location was remote, accessible only by car, suggesting someone had driven them there and dumped them. Joseph Grimes, the girl's father, was brought to the scene to identify the bodies. He took one look, said, "Yes, they are my daughters," and collapsed in tears. He had to be supported away from the scene by officers. The autopsies that followed would spark controversy that continues to this day. 3 experienced forensic pathologists examined the bodies for 5 hours each and couldn't agree on a cause or time of death. They did determine, based on the contents of the girls' stomachs, that they had likely died within 5 hours of leaving the theater on December 28th. That would place their deaths in the late evening of December 28th or early morning of December 29th. The official cause of death was listed as secondary shock from exposure to freezing temperatures. No fatal wounds were found. No drugs or alcohol were detected. The bodies were described as remarkably clean. But here's what made people suspicious. If the girls died on December 28th or 29th, how could so many people have seen them alive in the days and weeks that followed? Harry Gloss, the chief investigator for the Cook County Coroner's Office, didn't buy the official timeline. He pointed to a thin layer of ice found on the bodies, arguing it could only have formed if the girls had been alive and warm when placed there after January 7th, when sufficient snow had fallen. He also claimed the autopsy found evidence of repeated assault, including fluid that suggested ongoing abuse. Gloss believed the girls had been held captive, beaten, and violated for days before being murdered. His superiors disagreed. They insisted the wounds were from rodents, not violence. They said there was no evidence of prolonged captivity or extreme abuse. When Gloss refused to back down, he was fired. The coroner claimed it was for insubordination. Gloss claimed it was a cover-up, suggesting officials wanted to protect the girls' reputations and spare their mother additional pain by hiding the more disturbing details of what had happened to them. Some investigators and later researchers would claim that Barbara and Patricia weren't the innocent schoolgirls everyone believed them to be. Rumors circulated that they'd been seen hanging around bars on 36th Street and Archer Avenue, convincing older men to buy them drinks that would be delivered outside. These allegations were never proven, and many dismissed them as victim-blaming attempts to justify the official narrative. But the whispers persisted. The investigation quickly focused on suspects. The first was Edward Lee Bedwell, a 21-year-old drifter from Tennessee who bore a striking resemblance to Elvis Presley. The owner of a restaurant where Bedwell worked claimed he'd been there with 2 girls matching the Grimes sisters' description in the early morning of December 30th. After 3 days of interrogation, Bedwell signed a 14-page confession. According to Bedwell, he and a companion named William Cole Willingham had been with the sisters for over a week, drinking in various bars along West Madison Street. He claimed that after feeding the girls hot dogs, they'd beaten them when the sisters refused their advances, then thrown their nude bodies into a snow-filled ditch. When Loretta Grimes heard the confession, she said simply, "It's a lie. My girls wouldn't be on West Madison Street. They didn't even know where it was." She was right to be skeptical. The autopsy found no hot dogs or alcohol in either girl's system. Bedwell had been clocked in at work during the most likely time of the abduction. He later recanted his confession, claiming police had threatened and physically abused him during interrogation. 2 teenage girls came forward saying they were probably the ones who'd been with Bedwell and Willingham that night, not the Grimes sisters. All charges against Bedwell were dropped. He was later tried and acquitted for an unrelated assault in Florida. He died in 1972. Then there was Max Fleig, a 17-year-old who allegedly confessed during an unofficial polygraph test. Because he was a juvenile, Illinois law prevented police from using the test as evidence. They had to let him go. Fleig was later jailed for murdering a young woman in an unrelated case. Another suspect was Walter Kranz, a 53-year-old steamfitter who claimed to be psychic. On January 15th, he called police saying he'd had a dream that the girls were dead and their bodies could be found in an unincorporated area of Lyons Township. 1 week later, the bodies were discovered about a mile from where Kranz had described. When questioned, Cran said he'd had the vision after a night of heavy drinking. Handwriting experts suggested he might have written a ransom note received by the girl's mother, but after multiple interrogations, he was released. The case that really haunts investigators, though, involves a man named Charles Leroy Melquist. In September 1958, less than 2 years after the Grimes sisters disappeared, a 15-year-old girl named Bonnie Lee Scott vanished. 2 months later, her decapitated body was found less than 10 miles from where the Grimes sisters had been discovered. Melquist confessed to killing Bonnie. Investigators noted striking similarities between the cases, but Melquist's attorney refused to let him be questioned about the Grimes murders. Here's the chilling part. The day after Bonnie's body was found, Loretta Grimes received a phone call. A man's voice said, "I've committed another perfect crime. This is another one those cops won't solve." It was the same voice, Loretta insisted, that had called her months earlier in May 1957, taunting her with details about her daughter's deaths that had never been released to the public. In that earlier call, the man had said, "I know something about your little girl that no one else knows, not even the police. The smallest girl's toes were crossed at the feet." Then he'd laughed and hung up. Loretta Grimes never forgot that voice. She was certain the same person had killed both Bonnie Lee Scott and her daughters. But Melquist was never charged in connection with the Grimes case. He died in 2010, taking whatever secrets he had to the grave. The funeral for Barbara and Patricia was held on January 28, 1957. The community had rallied to raise money for the family who couldn't afford the burial costs. All fees were waived by the funeral home. The sisters were laid to rest side by side at Holy Sepulchre Cemetery in Alsip, Illinois. Their classmates served as pallbearers. Thousands attended, but the nightmare wasn't over for the Grimes family. The hoax calls continued. People claiming to have information. People claiming to be the killer. Each call reopened the wound. Loretta Grimes would spend the rest of her life wondering what really happened to her daughters in those final hours. Did they suffer? Were they afraid? Did they call out for her? 1 year after the murders, Loretta made a public statement. She said she believed her daughters had been killed by someone they knew. The weather had been bitterly cold that night, she reasoned, and Barbara and Patricia would never have gotten into a car with a stranger, no matter how uncomfortable they were. They must have trusted whoever took them. So what really happened to the Grimes sisters? The truth is, we may never know. The official investigation remains open but cold. 300,000 people were questioned. 2,000 were seriously interrogated. Multiple confessions were obtained and later recanted. Dozens of sightings were reported, many of them seemingly credible, and yet no one has ever been definitively charged with the murders. Some believe the girls died quickly on the night they disappeared, and all the subsequent sightings were cases of mistaken identity or attention-seeking. Others believe Harry Gloss was right, that the girls were held captive for days or weeks, subjected to horrors that officials covered up to protect their reputations. Still others think Charles Melquist was the killer, a predator who got away with murder because his lawyer was smart enough to keep him quiet. In 2013, a retired police officer named Raymond Johnson began his own investigation into the case. He's convinced it's still solvable, but only with public help. He believes Melquist was the perpetrator, pointing to the similarities between the Grimes and Scott cases, the timeline, and those haunting phone calls to Loretta Grimes. But without new evidence or witnesses coming forward, the case remains frozen in time, just like the bodies of those two sisters were frozen in the snow on that January day in 1957. The murder of the Grimes sisters changed Chicago. It shattered the city's sense of safety and innocence. Parents became more protective. Children were warned about strangers. The case became a cautionary tale, a reminder that evil can strike anywhere, even in a neighborhood movie theater on a cold December night. James Grimes, the sisters' younger brother who was only 11 when they were murdered, said in 2013 that he'd always assumed the case would never be solved. But with renewed interest in modern investigative techniques, he said, maybe there's hope. Maybe there is. Or maybe the truth died with Charles Melquist in 2010, or with Edward Bedwell in 1972, or with one of the dozens of other suspects who have passed away over the decades. Maybe the person who killed Barbara and Patricia Grimes is still out there, an old man or woman now, living with the secret of what they did to those two young girls who just wanted to see Elvis Presley one more time. What we do know is this: two sisters left their home on December 28, 1956, excited to see their favorite movie star. They never came back. Their bodies were found frozen and discarded like trash on a lonely road. And despite one of the most intensive investigations in Chicago history, no one has ever been held accountable for their deaths. The case remains open. If you have any information about the murder of Barbara and Patricia Grimes, the Cook County Sheriff's Office is still accepting tips. Even after all these years, someone out there might know something. Someone might have heard a deathbed confession. Someone might have found a diary or letters. Someone might finally be ready to tell the truth. Until then, the Grimes sisters rest side by side in Holy Sepulchre Cemetery, forever 15 and 12, forever frozen in time, forever waiting for justice that may never come. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join me as I continue to explore the cases that refuse to be forgotten. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more stories. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the unknown.